Hi class, welcome to week 4 of EMDD 101. In this video, I want to give a brief overview of where we've been already, and then I want to dive into our next topic, user experience design. So I'll define what user experience and user experience design are. Let me get my video to be small. There we go. So far we've learned about HCI and digital design. So I kind of traced that path from the huge field of human-computer interaction down to user experience design, digital design. We defined wicked problems and user-centered design. Hopefully I was able to communicate the value of user research and relying on users to help us understand their problems. Define design thinking, its methods, and its two modes of thinking, divergent and convergent thinking. And we looked at how to engage with users and other stakeholders like teammates with design thinking methods in a example workshop. We either did challenge mapping or brainstorming. So there's sort of a transition this week. In the last 3 weeks, most of what we've looked at has been based around methods, theory, approach, and process. So these are concepts. This really has been conceptual so far. Ways of doing design and ways of thinking like a designer. So if I could summarize weeks 1 through 3, it's really about helping you to get into the mindset of a designer. And then this week, we're going to shift into design skills. So skills are the abilities that you need, the competencies in order to do design and actually have tangible results of designs. These are demonstrable things that you'll be demonstrating by trying them. And now we're shifting for the next 5 weeks. We're going to look at actually getting you into doing design by practicing the skills of a designer. And those are going to be the 5 competencies of user experience design. We're going to start this week with information architecture. But before we do that, I just want to define user experience. It sounds really kind of weird, I think, to say like we need to define user experience, right? It seems pretty obvious. It's a person's experience of using a product or a service. But I think there's 2 things that can be sort of glossed over or missed with this definition, and if we kind of treat it like it's easy to define. And the first is that a person's experience is all of their touch points as part of using a product or a service. It's all the way from learning about its existence, to buying it, to setting it up, to getting support and help with it if they need that, using it over and over again, or deciding not to use it. Or if the product or service has a lifespan, there's that end of life. You know, if it's a physical product, do you throw it away? Do you recycle it? These are all parts of the experience. And a person's prior experience with other products or service might even come into play as well in their experience of a new product or service. If they are familiar with a competitor, they might have some experience from the past that is part of their user experience with the new product or service. So I think it's really easy to kind of say that user experience design is something that designers with that title do at companies like software companies where they work on the software, but that's not necessarily accurate. If you're in marketing, you're probably doing user experience design because you're designing the experience of becoming aware of something, a product or a service. If you are in finance, someone has to pay for your product or service, and the decisions you make around how they're going to pay for it influences the experience that that person has with the product. So it's a lot more holistic than I think it sometimes gets credit for. The other aspect that I think can be really easy to gloss over is, what is an experience, really? I mean, think about it, right? Try to write down a solid definition of experience that doesn't include the word experience itself, right? It gets very conceptual and esoteric. An experience is like this sum of our interaction with something and what it is and how we're interpreting that and the emotions we're feeling and the attitudes we bring to it and the things that we're doing as part of that interaction. It's pretty complicated, actually. It's not super simple to define an experience. So when we think about user experience, we have to, I think, remember that that includes what the user is thinking, feeling, doing, what they've done in the past. When they come to an experience, when they're currently experiencing something, they have prior experiences that might be guiding how they think about and interpret the experience that they're having now. And so the user experience is perceived by an individual person. It's something that is built in the person's head as they're experiencing it. As designers, we can really only measure the experience through the lens of people using it. We can only measure their emotions, attitudes, behaviors, understanding of that experience. It's a lot like a wicked problem. I think we could think about it as a wicked solution. There's no solution that is demonstrably, mathematically or through some other process completely right and everyone agrees that it's right. An experience can be felt. Something designed can be experienced by different people differently. And that makes it a really interesting field to work in, and is a reason why we really want to make sure we are working with the people who are going to be experiencing our design rather than just guesstimating what their experience is going to be like. We have to kind of put our version of the experience out and see if they're perceiving it in the same way we thought they would or thought they should. So if it experiences this sort of esoteric perception that someone has in their head while they're interacting with something, what can we as designers do to influence a person's experience? What are the tangible components that we can put into the world and put into that interaction that influence the perception that person builds? And I really love this model of thinking about user experience in that way, which is to break it down into some planes that build on each other, all the way from abstract to concrete. So the idea is that when we're designing an experience, we start with the strategy. We understand the user and what they're trying to do, or our business and what our business wants that user to do. If we want them to buy something or we want them to feel a certain way, this is the reason why the experience exists, and it's going to drive these 4 other planes. That strategy is going to determine the scope, what features and functions are in the experience. What can a person do when they interact within that experience? And then the skeleton and structures based on that. How is the experience organized and presented? Is it broken up into categories? Is it sequential? And then the surface, what the experience looks, smells, and sounds like. So let's look at an example of this really quickly. One of my favorite experiences is the Dinosphere at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis. It is super fun to take kids there, and it's super fun to just go there as an adult. And the strategy behind this exhibit, the big enduring idea they call it, they want people to take away when they go to this exhibit is, people are coming to the museum because they want to entertain their kids. They want something for their kids to do. They want something to do as a family, but they are looking for something that is educational, that's going to get their kids, thinking and not just being entertained. And so the enduring idea behind this exhibit is fossils are clues that help us learn about dinosaurs. So it's really about curiosity and helping kids to understand science and understand how, if we want to know how dinosaurs lived, we use science. We ask questions, we look for clues, we interpret the clues, and we make some learnings from that. So the strategy is all around helping kids to understand how to learn, really, from clues and evidence. And based on that strategy, the scope is the features and the functions. So if we want kids to learn that fossils are clues that help us learn about dinosaurs, and we want them to learn how to, what's a clue and how do you look at it and how do you extrapolate meaning from it, what should they be doing inside this exhibit? Should we just fill it with a bunch of cool dinosaurs, or should we have other stuff? And so the scope is the features and functions. And this photograph is depicting one of those features, which is an actual dinosaur body. So there's a bunch of clues here, and you can see on the wall, they're calling out the clues. They're saying, okay, this is a fossil, fossils are clues. So let's look at the fossil, and then let's look at the clues. Let's look at the skin, let's look at the tendon, let's look at the stomach. And then from that, they help the kids understand the meaning. Let's look at the stomach, and there's a little thing you can look at, and it's asking you, based on what was found in the stomach of this dinosaur, what do you think it ate? So the features and functionalities extend the strategy. The structure and the skeleton is the organization of the entire exhibit and also of its individual parts. So when families walk into this exhibit, what should they do first? Should they do something like this? Hey, welcome to Dinosphere. Here's a computer screen you can touch. No, because that's not going to get the kids to be curious. They want the kids to learn about curiosity and then finding clues and then interpreting those clues. They want to spark the kids to have questions and understand how to find answers to those questions. So they're not going to give something that's not that curiosity inducing as the first thing. And so the skeleton and the structure supports the strategy. And then finally, the surface supports the strategy, right? We want things that are curiosity inducing. We want to show how fossils are clues. And so you have this beautiful surface level, the aesthetics, the colors, the fonts on the the graphics on the exhibit, the placement of the dinosaurs. They even use smell in this exhibit. They have like a cedar and magnolia smell that wafts around because those are trees that would have existed at the same time as the dinosaurs that are on display. So everything is in service to the strategy, but these are the tangible things that we can manipulate in order to create an experience, to get the families to have certain emotions, certain attitudes, to help them find meaning and get that learning takeaway, and to go through behaviors that drive all of this. So all user experience design is the decision making around these things, figuring out the strategy. And I put this graphic over here upside down because that's actually the order that you go in, right? You figure out why, which is the strategy. So user motivations, the needs for the design existing, what does the user want to or should feel, think, and do during or after this experience, and that's going to drive the what, the functionality, that's going to drive the how, the structure, skeleton, and surface. Basically, how is someone going to do it? Here's why they're going to have this experience, here's what the experience is going to be, and here's how they're going to have that experience, step by step, and what it's going to look like. So that's everything I wanted to talk about with user experience design. I'll see you in the next video about the 5 competencies of user experience design.